All right, so there was a lot of news yesterday that Brian Cashman actually showed up in Buffalo to give the Yankees a pep talk before last night's game. Now, there was no footage of this supposed pep talk, but I did speak to an insider, and I was able to arrange this reenactment.
You lollygag the ball around the infield. You lollygag your way down to first. You lollygag in and out of the dugout. Do you know what that makes you, Larry?
Lollygaggers.
Lollygaggers.
Someone actually called me a fair weather fan for calling out the Yankees' performance in my videos. The rest of Yankees YouTube is quiet. None of these content creators are even showing up after a loss. I'm here to take the abuse. I'm here to take it, but I am not a fair weather fan. The Yankees just need to play better. Plain and simple. There's no way that a team that's this supposedly deep should be under 500 after 40-plus games of a season, which if the Yankees don't win today, that's exactly what they're looking at. They come in at 21-21. I'm also going to take a more in-depth look at Deivi Garcia and what he's done in his first two starts. We're going to look at some of the statcast data and take a look at his spin rate. We're going to take a look at his pitch usage and sort of the location that he generally throws to, his pitch velocities, and kind of project his future a little bit. I think this young man's got a very bright future ahead of him. And then finally, I'm going to talk to Gary Scheffler of GOATA Locomotive Systems. And we're going to go over Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton and see if there's a reason why these guys keep ending up on the IL, and if there's something to the fact that it's just the way they're built as human beings, and whether or not these injury-prone tendencies can be overcome. But first, Deivi Garcia. Deivi Garcia is looking for his first win of the season today. First win of his Major League career. He's got a 3.38 ERA in 2 starts. That's a little bit higher than it probably should be. He had a couple of inherited runners that scored when Clark Schmidt came into the game last time against Baltimore. But Deivi Garcia has been mostly pretty impressive. Let's take a look at some of his numbers so far. His 2020 pitch distribution. You can see that his stuff is actually at or below league average when in terms of just velocity. His fastball is about 92.1 miles an hour. That's significantly below the league average. His curveball is 76 miles an hour. That's below league average. His changeup, well below league average. And his slider, well below league average in terms of speed. But let's take a look at his location. You see his slider is basically missing on the outside part of the plate. That's actually good. That means he's actually getting break on it. His curveball is mostly down in the zone, so he's throwing those in good locations. His four-seam fastball has me a little bit concerned because look how erratic that pattern is. It's like a shotgun. A lot of balls right in the middle, not as many on the corners. And his changeup, you can see that he's primarily throwing it to lefties, and it's got that down and away sink, and it's mostly in the lower outside quadrant if you're a left-handed hitter. So let's take a look at some of his StatCast stats. Exit velocity of 84 miles an hour and 20.9 launch angle. That means routine fly ball, baby. That's what you're going to get from Deivi Garcia. I see him as mostly a strikeout and fly ball pitcher, but he changes speeds enough that he doesn't get a lot of exit velocity, so he might be able to keep the ball in the ballpark. I also like that he works quick, which is important because you're not, mulling around the mound. You're up there with some intent. If we look at his vertical movement by pitch against league average, you can see that his slider has 41 inches of drop. That's 1.3 inches more than average, about 3% more than average. His changeup is actually worse than league average, 30.4 inches of drop. That's about 3.9 inches less than average, or about 11%. But look at the curveball and the fastball. His curveball has 65.1 inches of drop. That's 10% better than the league average, 5.8 more than the league average. And his fastball has 13.6 inches of drop. That's 3.3 more than league average, or 19%. So he's getting a lot of movement on his pitches. And if you look at his horizontal movement, Basically, he's getting less horizontal movement than, you know, most players in the league, except on that fastball. He gets about, 10% more than average, about 8.8 inches of break. So Deivi Garcia gets a lot of movement on his pitches, a lot of late life. That's what you hear David Cohn talking about. It's not all about velocity. It's not all about, how much you can buzz it by somebody. It's about how you place the ball and how you move the ball. It's about creating deception. As a hitter, if a pitcher is throwing, different speeds, moving the ball in and out, I don't really have somewhere to look. I kind of have to guess. But if a pitcher's just throwing a lot of fastballs and they're trying to beat me on the fastball, all I have to do is gear up on the fastball, and try and connect on that 100-mile-an-hour fastball or whatever. That's why I think you're going to see Deivi Garcia give up less home runs than most of the Yankees pitchers. I don't think he's going to be a home run pitcher. I think he's going to be a guy that gets a lot of soft fly balls because he's, getting guys to have awkward swings. And I think he's going to get a lot of strikeouts because he does get a lot of vertical movement on that breaking ball. And if you have to kind of wait on that 76-mile-an-hour curveball, it makes that 92-mile-an-hour fastball play at about 95. And we have seen him touch 95, so that means that plays at like 98. So Deivi Garcia, I think, and I could be wrong, I think he's got a bright future. And I think his stuff is only going to get better. He's still very young. He's still quite a ways away from his prime. And we've seen pitchers really take off after, usually about a year or two in the big league. So, this is a nice tune-up for him. The Yankees probably are not going to do anything this season based on the way the season has gone. So it's a good chance for him to get some work, to try and pitch under a little bit of pressure because they do have to make some things happen, but to basically get his footing as a big league pitcher. So really looking forward to seeing what Deivi Garcia can do with his career going forward. And I think he's got a good chance to pitch well today against the Blue Jays, though this will be his toughest test. So if he does get shelled, don't come back and say, I told you so. Remember, he is, I think, 20 years old. So let's hope that he pitches well tonight. All right, everybody, my guest today is Gary Scheffler from GOATA Locomotives. He is an expert on body mechanics and how athletes train. And I wanted to have him on today to talk a little bit about Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, who've been injured quite a bit. These are two very, very large gentlemen that seems to have a lot of injury prone despite being world-class athletes. So I wanted to talk to Gary about why something like that could be the case. Gary, thanks for joining me.
How you doing?
Doing good. How you doing?
I'm good. Listen, I'm from New Orleans, but I get the New York thing all the time. So, the accent's a little strong.
I love it. So I wanted to get a quick review of GOATA Sports. And GOATA, is that greatest of all time athletes?
So it's greatest of all time actions.
Okay.
What creates the greatest of all time athletes, right? Because we're not talking talent when we talking movement. We talking about movement optimization. So your mailman could be a superior mover, right? But that don't mean that he could go play baseball with, Derek Jeter or whatever. But it does mean that he could run his route for 30 years and play with his kids on the weekend. You know what I'm saying? And be pain-free and live a comfortable lifestyle.
So what is the basic philosophy behind GOATA? Are there certain types of movements that are pluses or negatives for the human body that we do unconsciously that we don't even realize?
Yeah, so let me just give you an idea of what GOATA is. GOATA is an innate security pattern that we decoded through slow motion video by studying the greatest athletes of all time. Let's say this. The healthiest athletes of all time. Guys like Derek Jeter, Ricky Henderson, Mookie Betts that's currently still playing, Ozzie Smith. These guys had a pattern about them, but from foot strike to where the head was when the foot strike to different. There was different identifiers that we noticed, but we also noticed that in the pattern was the same in crawling derivatives with a baby, but the baby uses its knee to move around instead of its foot, right? So the pivot point, which we call it, or the contact point of where the body contacts the ground was the knee instead of the foot. And the spine did the same thing. There was movement in the spine. And then we looked at a lot of indigenous cultures, right, which is your most durable people on the planet. Studied a lot of different tribesmen and different tribes around the world that still exist in the world today. And that pattern was very consistent with the super athlete, with the crawling baby. And then we also looked at the weekend warrior, the guy that's 65 years old that goes run a half marathon and he could go to work on Monday, right? So what we did is we took those patterns and then we took and we compared it to the guy that's got the soft tissue injury repetitively. I'm not talking about a tweaked hamstring one season where he misses, 10 games and then he's back playing the next season and never misses a game. I'm talking about the guy, I'm talking about the Judge, I'm talking about, those guys that miss, they always seem like they got something going on in their body. Size has nothing to do with it. You got offensive linemen that play in the NFL and get beat up for 10 and 12. Andre, what was it? Whitworth played 16 years with no knee brace.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you got these guys that play, or Willie Roafs and guys like that. Now, what we've done is we've taken it steps further and we looked at different training derivatives and things like that. And we compared what's happening in the training to the actual human locomotives, and they two totally different things. Unfortunately, we are creatures of habit, right? Neurologically, we can be reprogrammed, or should I say deprogrammed from what we should be doing. So when you take a guy like Eric, listen, you just got rid of your strength coach. You just fired your whole strength staff with the Yankees, and you brought in somebody from the same academia that comes from the same, brace the core, Olympic lifting, reverse torque movements and stuff like that. And you're back in the same boat that you was in before. Absolutely.
It's extremely frustrating as a fan. So explain to me a little bit more of that academia that you're talking about, that Eric Cressey and the previous Yankee staff seem to be proponents of.
So just like you said, these guys are these beautiful, big human beings, right? Like they look like they should be on the cover of a GQ magazine with their shirt off or something like that.
They are.
Guess what? It really don't mean shit compared to movement. So everything's built off of aesthetics and it's built off of numbers, right? Well, if his squat and his bench press and all of that stuff goes up, well, the strength coach feels like, well, I'm doing my job. He got stronger. Well, if he goes to the field and pulls his hamstring every other week, or has a soft tissue injury every other week, or blows his knee out running down a ball in the outfield, that's not normal.
Right.
You can't, whoever you believe in or whoever you pray to or whatever, did not create something that could last 100 years, but the fibers in the tissue inside of it last 25. You know what I'm saying? It don't make sense. So when we go into the workout facilities and these programs of force rate production and all of these different concepts that they've come up with over the years, it's kind of like, it's like everything else that man puts his hands on. We destroy something, right? And we've destroyed or we bastardized human locomotives through the strength and conditioning programs over the past 100 years. And it's got to be revisited, and that's what we did. And when the iPad came out in 2014, 2013, we had the ability to break down movement frame by frame and study all the non-contacts, all the repetitive stress injuries, all of the, and then build this, right? I mean, it really was a common sense approach. Like, what's the guy doing that stays healthy? And what's the guy doing that gets hurt? And we came up with GOATA.
So for the layman, somebody who might not understand biometrics, biomechanics, like my dumb ass, what are some things that athletes can do to correct some of these, I guess, behaviors that can cause them to be injury prone, if that's even possible? Or are they just basically stuck in how you're made, you're made?
We recode. I got 65-year-old grandmas that come in here that was, they would go on, go to Walt Disney World and they couldn't walk around. And we come in here, we built protocols, we built a performance system, we built a strength system. And listen, I hate to tell you, but like the Orioles already been in touch with us. We've talked to a couple of teams. We've had some we talked to our NFL team already. We've had strength coaches from all over the world, and we created a certification process too. But this works on anybody, right? If you feel like your back's hurting from doing these podcasts and sitting in that chair too much, we have a protocol that'll because that pattern is innate, the nervous system will turn back on. It's like riding a bike, right? Like if we get you on there and we get enough repetitions, you'll go, like it might take you, 2 months to learn how to ride a bike. But if you don't do it for 10 years, you can learn how to ride a bike again in a day perfectly and catch up to what you was 10 years ago. Because that pattern's been encoded in your nervous system. We go in there, we wake that pattern up, we change posture, we change human movement behavior, and the athletes stay healthy. Listen, Daryl Williams is a running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a number 2 guy over there right now behind the rookie that they just got, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He is the only athlete that we've had tweak a hamstring. And he missed, he ended up getting put on the IR or whatever, and he missed some time. But that was it. In the last 3 to 4 years, we haven't had a non-contact catastrophic injury or a significant time missed out of our program. And I mean, Jamar Chase is one of my athletes. I've been training him since the 8th grade, which is the big receiver that just opted out of college football. He's a Biletnikoff Award winner, for those who might not know. But I mean, we got Daryl. I done worked with Tyson Ross. Tyson Ross was a guy that had a bunch of shoulder issues or whatever. He couldn't hold a ball no more because he was having nerve damage and stuff. He's back. He had signed with the San Francisco, and he was back throwing 95 once he went through the program. So we've already done touched on some baseball stuff. I believe it's Joey Bell or whatever was working with one of our guys. He did a few sessions with him or whatever. But what's happening is these athletes are coming to us. They get a little taste of it and they feel better. So if they stick with it, then they could change and recode their movement pattern completely and go back to that innate pattern. Or they could just get the feeling better, and then they go back and they do all the same training, all of the same behavior. How much you sitting down has a lot to do with it, or the way that you sit, changes posture and different things like that with the hips. So everything that we do as a society also has a big role in our movement patterns.
You mentioned something yesterday in that a player's gait, the actual way that they walk, can affect their injuries on the field. How does that work?
So one thing is you're 3 times your body weight when you walk. Okay, so there's a constant, every time that foot strikes the ground, it's almost like you're getting these little bitty increments of strength, right? And if that pattern is wrong, if you walk in duck-footed, then you become duck-footed. If you walk with straight feet, which that's one of the things that we do with a lot of our athletes is we call them traveling drills, right? Like we recode the neurological system the same way that it became decoded. We want to walk straight foot. You want, when the foot's straight, you want the foot to be straight, and you want the inside bone of the ankle to remain higher than the outside at all times. So what happens is when you see these guys in the weight room and they Olympic lifting, and what happens with the foot is the foot goes open, the hips go open, the ankle collapses, and the knee goes in. On a lot of the Olympic lifting and power lifting and heavy squats and stuff like that. When the body moves forward in space, it comes off the 4th and 5th metatarsal of the foot and it goes this way. So it's actually the opposite of the way that you move is the way that we build in strength. So if you in the gym and you're doing 1,000 repetitions of opening, and then you go out on the field and you hanging out with your buddies and you duck-footed and you've been doing hip thrust and kettlebell swings and your hips start pushing forward, well, guess what you're not using no more? You're not using that innate pattern. So as you walk, and you take 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 steps a day, some people take more than that, you're just starting to take that innate pattern and just break it down and make it worse. So then when you get an athlete that goes to the field and he's got to explode, and his instinct wants to go internal, but he's programmed external, then you get the soft tissue injury.
Gary, this has been extremely enlightening. If I end up getting any kind of a contact with the Yankees, I'm going to suggest you go in and have a meeting with them, because, you know, the Yankees have really been dealing with a lot of injuries the last couple of years. And what you're saying makes sense to me. I mean, these are finely tuned athletes. They should be able to do basic baseball activities. Giancarlo Stanton, for instance, has been hurt running the bases 2 years in a row. And as an athlete, as a professional athlete, I feel like you should be able to do the basic tenets of your sport without being injured.
It's your birthright to run.
Right.
First, that's a big problem too, right? Like, we get these little kids, they 2 and 3 years old, they start running around, and they call it bad, right? Like, sit him down, get him in the corner, give him an iPad, and then we give him the iPad, the head goes straight down, and we immediately start to decode that innate pattern that we were born with.
Can things like constant phone usage or technology, video games, things like that, can they alter your posture to the
1,000%?
So what would your advice be to a young athlete who wants to avoid injuries, who, you know, maybe can't afford a personal trainer and all these great facilities? What are some basic things that an athlete can do to ensure that they are able to stay on the field and stay healthy?
The easiest thing, the best thing to do is never stop running, never stop walking, stay on your feet, keep your feet straight. You know, the other thing is there's a concept that we call back chain dominant, meaning you got to be driven by your glutes and your hamstrings. In order to do that, you can't have your hips push forward. So when you're kind of laid back and playing video games all the time, and your hips are pushed forward, that sedentariness or that sedentary lifestyle, you get stuck. And then you got to take that to the field, and you start having back issues and things like that. But for a young kid that don't really have, you know, might not be from the greatest demographic or something like that, play. Keep moving. You know what I'm saying? Stay away from those things. You know, we've created one of our things that our athletes get is we give them ways to rest. Like, not just, we got these little Caesar chairs, or we call them GOATA stools, that you use to kind of stay in these innate patterns. And our athletes, we kind of give them to them, or either they'll buy them or whatever. And then we got people, we probably done sold 100 of them around the world. And people's like, my knees feel better just from sitting on the chair. So if you could take, you gotta, in other words, like, they not throwing video games and cell phones in the garbage. We could forget that. So it's almost like we gotta kind of figure out a way to make those things safer, I guess you could say.
Right.
So, but yeah, to answer your question, that's a major problem.
Yeah, I mean, as human beings, I think we've just come so far from what we evolved as to, you know, where we were hunter-gatherers, and we didn't really eat as much as we eat now. We didn't eat processed foods. We didn't eat, you know, all this sugar. You know, so I feel like, you know, over time, just the human evolution to this technological society where we spend most of the day sitting at our desks and things like that, it's made our people just very unhealthy. And if you look at other parts of the world, people are a lot healthier, where they maintain sort of that archaic almost lifestyle, you know, where, you know, if you look at the people who win the marathons every year, it's always the people who don't have shoes because they run properly on the balls of their feet.
That's right. Yeah, the shoe, we put a cast on the bottom of the foot. Listen, and I'm guilty of it too, and I know better. Like, I mean, I got a son that's 3 years old. He done had 3 pairs of Jordans already. Like, it's the worst thing to put on your kid. But it's almost like you dress them. But if you know, I don't know if you have kids or not, but my kids hate shoes. Like, they don't want them on. They get in the car from school. They take the shoes, the socks, everything's off. It could be 20 degrees outside, which is very rare here in New Orleans. But if it was, they outside barefooted. It's not until grandma or somebody comes by and says, oh, put a jacket on that baby. That baby's going to get sick. Well, when that happens, immediately you start working against that nervous system because they not out there shivering. They not out there cold. They don't know what cold really is until you cover them up. You know, so it's just like what you're saying with the diet side of it. The body can I don't even want to say survive, but it performs at a high level. With that intermittent fasting is one thing that works good, right? A lot of people's losing weight, they get healthier. Yeah. So, and you probably after the first 2 weeks, you probably felt great.
So yeah, when I first started, I was really hungry in the beginning, but I noticed that, you know, after a certain amount of time, I just didn't feel the need to eat as much. And when I started breaking my fast with healthier foods, healthier choices like nuts or fruits, you know, you go from, 8 p.m. or whatever till noon the next day, and then you eat something healthy to begin with, it really just changes the energy for your whole day. It changes everything about your day. I just felt a lot more alert. My brain activity got better. My sleep got better. And so I'll never go back to, eating breakfast. I know they used to say it's the most important meal of the day, but I disagree.
Well, who said that?
Yeah, the breakfast.
Jimmy Dean?
Yeah,
came up with that. You know what I'm saying? Like who said it's the most important meal of the day? Some guy that's selling eggs somewhere.
General Mills.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much, Gary, for joining me. I've got to run and get this published, but I really appreciate you joining me. And everybody go check out GOATA. They've got some really interesting stuff, some really great research. And I'm telling you, I know Brian Cashman, the GM of the Yankees, watches this from time to time. I've had some communications with him. Brian, bring this guy in for a meeting. Fire Air Cressy's ass. Send him home. Get this guy in here. Thanks a bunch.
Hey, we'd love to be a part of it.
All right. Thanks a lot, buddy.
All right. No problem, man.
Hey, guys. Help support the podcast by buying swag from my store. Link is in the description.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It helps YouTube suggest this channel to other Yankees fans.